Welcome to the Big Book Roundtable and the RICO 12 family of recovery resources targeted at people from all backgrounds, faiths, and places dealing with addictions of all varieties. In this roundtable, David, Nikki, and I sit around at this virtual table and we read line by line, paragraph by paragraph through the first 164 pages, plus the Roman numerals at the beginning of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And we are picking up where we left off last episode in Bill's story. But before we get into that reading real quick, I'd like to do a real quick introduction of my panelists here, Nikki M. and David G. Nikki, say hi and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nikki M., and I'm a sensitive person. And my book tells me that we addicts are sensitive people. But guess what? I'm outgrowing that serious handicap. And I do that by sitting here at the round table with you guys. I'm grateful.
Awesome. Thanks, Nikki. I appreciate that. David, tell us a little bit about you. Introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Nikki. David G. from Oklahoma. I'm an alcoholic and an addict of many sorts. Grateful to have been sober in the rooms for almost 3 decades now, and very grateful, even more than any of that, to have a relationship with a loving God as I've understood him today. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And I'm Justin. I am from Spokane, Washington, and I have been in the rooms a little over a decade. And what a miracle living this life of recovery has been, and what a growth opportunity it has been in my life, and hopefully continues to be for many years to come. All right. We're going to jump right back into where we left off in Bill's story. At the top of page 10 of your 4th edition of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Grab that book, get it out, get a pen, highlighter out, just get ready to take notes as we do some swimming through the next page and a half of this story where Bill W. and Ebby Thatcher meet at his kitchen table and some of the results from that. Here we go, picking up where we left off. He talked for hours. Childhood memories rose before me. I could almost hear the sound of the preacher's voice as I sat on still Sundays, way over there on the hillside. There was that proffered temperance pledge that I never signed. My grandfather's good-natured contempt of some church folk and their doings. His insistence that the spheres really had their music, but his denial of the preacher's right to tell him how he must listen. His fearlessness as he spoke of these things just before he died. These recollections welled up from the past. They made me swallow hard. That wartime day in old Winchester Cathedral came back again. I had always believed in a power greater than myself. I had often pondered these things. I was not an atheist. Few people really are, for that means blind faith in the strange proposition that this universe originated in a cipher and aimlessly rushes nowhere. My intellectual heroes, the chemists, the astronomers, even the evolutionists, suggested vast laws and forces at work. Despite contrary indications, I had little doubt that a mighty purpose and rhythm underlay all. How could there be so much precise and immutable law and no intelligence? I simply had to believe in a spirit of the universe who knew neither time nor limitation, but that was as far as I had gone. With ministers and the world religions, I parted right there. When they talked of a God personal to me, who was love, superhuman strength, and direction, I became irritated, and my mind snapped shut against such a theory. To Christ, I conceded the certainty of a great man, not too closely followed by those who claimed him. His moral teaching, most excellent. For myself, I had adopted those parts which seemed convenient and not too difficult. The rest I disregarded. The wars which had been fought, the burnings and chicanery that religious dispute had facilitated made me sick. I honestly doubted whether, on balance, the religions of mankind had done any good. Judging from what I had seen in Europe and since, the power of God in human affairs was negligible. The brotherhood of man, a grim jest. If there was a devil, he seemed the boss universal, and he certainly had me. Okay. It's a lot of stuff in there. Let's jump back in here and start off with Nikki today. Nikki, why don't you jump in there and tell us a few things that jumped out at you?
Well, I'm living this right now. I want to start backwards, to be honest, where you left off about if there was a devil. He certainly had me. if you're listening to this in future time, we're in the end of 2023, and we've just come out of COVID, and a lot of things are going on strange in the world. And the cynicism over the state of the nations, if there had been, this is my experience, judging from what he had seen in your world, judging what I'm seeing currently in the world, I really have to reach deep for this power right now, Justin and David. Like this, I'm right here right now. Before I came on here, I was, one of my addictions is scrolling, unfortunately. Yes, I'm 50. I'm not 16 getting likes. I'm looking at the dark web, and it's actually the enlightening web, because I'm finding out what the hell's going on in the world. But I'm not allowed to indulge in the cynicism of the state of the nations, because that will, as we see it with Bill W., that blocks me from God. That blocks me from God. So I'll jump back over to page 10 where we started. And, these childhood memories rose before me. And I can't wait to hear what David has to say about all this history. But these are my experiences too. I mean, when I think hard of my childhood memories, I went to a Christian school. It was called Happiness Christian School in Cypress, California. And I've never been in a church with my mom. You see the hand of God there. Like, why would my mom even put me there? My mom has no religious background, and my family doesn't really on that side. And these childhood memories, thinking about how it's just the seed was planted. And I had always believed in a power greater than myself. Because I don't know, it just was planted there from childhood memories. And, I got into my addiction. Here it is. Because I don't want to, we don't want to do a fist step here on the channel. We want to talk in a general way, but I do things that are unmentionable in my disease, and I don't like to share them with anybody but the properly appointed authority. And my views on all of this stuff was skewed. And when I read this, that I simply had to believe in a spirit of the universe, that takes all the religion, all that stuff out, all of it, a God personal to me. And that's where my journey began, in the rooms, when I really could just do that. Like when I could really do that, that really rocketed me. And then on the top of page 11, where it says to Christ, I said I went to Happiness Christian School. I would have identified as a Christian. Now I'm an ominist. I believe in every religion, everything. I take something from everyone. And of course, I do know the history of a radical Jew named Jesus and his moral. Remember, everybody, this is a moral teaching. So that's why I don't even tell you my actions. You don't need to know. You don't need to know what I did, but you need to know that I was selfish, self-centered, lustful, dishonest, greedy, you name it. I'm all those moral defects. And in Christ's moral teaching, they are most excellent. So my line out says here, I just take what I like and leave the rest. This is what this is what he did. I had adopted those parts, that's Bill speaking, which seems convenient and not too difficult. The rest I disregarded. I would take what I like and leave the rest. Here, whatever my big book says, I believe. I believe it, full stop. It's like 100% all or nothing. So I guess that's just, I kind of did that backwards about, I have a prejudice against religions because of all the stuff that's been going on in the world, present and past. I'm kind of all over the board on this as I share, but again, just to recap, my childhood memories deep down inside of me, and I just have to believe in this power. And I don't need to use this program for convenience and when I need it and want it. This is a lifestyle, everyone. So I want to get real serious about that. And I'm glad I tattled on myself. When I get off the phone, what am I going to do? Am I going to scroll, or am I going to get back to God?
Thanks, Nikki. Thanks for sharing your some vulnerability there, tattling on yourself, as you put it. And thanks for your share there. David, tell us a little bit about what you pull from this reading from today, and a little background of that.
Yeah, absolutely, Justin. Thank you. And Nikki, always so good to hear you, sister. You've got a powerful message, and I just love to be at this table with you. Thank you so much. He talked for hours. Man, that's a hard place to be when you're drunk and somebody else is talking about God. I don't know about you, but I know about me, and I don't like hearing that stuff. But he's got Bill's attention here. He really does. You know, memories. We're going to see a lot of meditation going on with Bill here. He's pondering now. He says, you know, I could almost hear the sound of the preacher's voice as I sat on still Sundays way over there on the hillside. And we got to remember when he was in Europe, whenever he was in the war, you know, this is what he's talking about. Now, all of a sudden, his spiritual experience that day in the front of his story, when he said, much moved, I wandered outside, you know, and, you know, he had an experience that day, but it was taken away. And now he's reached bottom and he's really beginning to have this experience again. This is just the beginning of it. That proffered temperance pledge. Wow. So that's something that was not only intended not only to secure a promise by the taker of the pledge, but it was intended that they would abstain absolutely from the consumption of any alcoholic beverage. But it was also a pledge that was commonly linked to the broader moral principles through like the connection of the family Bible, things like that. And Bill says, I never signed that. Well, I never did either. You know, I mean, heck, I wasn't about to. And in my day, you know, that wasn't something. But in those days, that's something they come around trying to get people to sign. And but he talks about his grandpa, and his grandpa, they called him Grandpa Griffith. And he talks about his denial of the preacher's right to tell him how he must listen. And I think for so long, we're so confused with that. Whenever we come into the program, we think that these are things that we absolutely must listen to, or else something bad is going to happen to us. I know I felt that way for a long time. But what I come to learn, and especially through that exercise on page 47 of the book, when we get to that, one of the things that I came to learn, because I was really against this Jesus Christ deal. I had no time for that. I didn't want to hear it. I can remember being locked up in prison. A guy started talking about that, man. Well, I was going to cut his throat. And, you know, the Gideons would bring Bibles around, and I'd throw them in the corner and say, anybody pick that up, you know, you'll die in your sleep tonight. And we'd tear the pages out of it and roll cigarettes with it and smoking the Holy Bible, you know. I mean, it's just insanity all the time. And so I can relate to a lot of this. When I first come here, a lot of the things that I would hear is Bill Witham was an atheist. He was this, he was that. He makes it very clear right here. That's not the truth. He said, I always believed in a power greater than self. I often pondered these things. I was not an atheist. He's not an atheist. And he says, few people really are. And here's the definition of what that means. It's a blind faith in a strange proposition that the universe originated in a cipher and aimlessly rushes nowhere. I mean, if I believe that, there's not very much substance to my belief. And so I just love this with the world's, the minister and the world's religions. I parted right there. That's exactly what I done. I can remember as a very young man listening to that, and something on the inside of me just did not sit well with that. But what I come to learn later on, and again, particularly in that exercise on page 47, it wasn't so much that I didn't believe in Christ. I thought that for so long. What I couldn't accept is what they were teaching me about him. And what I come to learn is broken people trying to teach broken people, you're just leading to a whole bunch of continued brokenness. So when I was able to see that and set that aside and say, God, you know, reveal yourself to me, whoever you may be, reveal yourself to me. Well, God answered that on page 57 of our book. It says, when we drew near to him, then he disclosed himself to us. So there's a condition there. I'm going to need to draw near to him through this process, this work of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the steps therein. And then, you know, he begins to reveal himself to me. This is a beautiful part of Bill's story here. When they talked of a God personal to me whose loves superhuman strength and direction, he says, I become irritated. My mind snaps shut against such a theory. Remember that in the doctor's opinion, it talked about that. Irritable restlessness and discontentment. And for me, for so long, I thought that was talking about alcohol. It was talking about drugs. It was talking about food. But for me today, after all these years, I look at that as my belief. If I'm getting irritated because someone is preaching something to me that I don't want to hear, and I'm acting a fool over that, then chances are that the problem's not with them, it's with me. And so top of it, page 11, to Christ I conceded the certainty of a great man. And this is what I held on forever, not so much the fact that he was a great man, but he was not too closely followed by those who claimed him. And man, I used that against people in religion for a long time. I like what Nikki shared on this. His moral teaching most excellent. But for myself, and this is what I'd done, I adopted those parts which seemed convenient and not too difficult. The rest I disregarded. And so if I do that, the chances are that, one, I'm not in a spiritually fit place to begin with. But the other is I'm missing out on such a beautiful, beautiful way of life. Because what I've learned in my experience for almost 30 years, when we take these steps as they're outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, that is the authentic message that has been given all these years. It just is, like it or not. And if I'd known that in the beginning, I might not have stayed. But you know what? It doesn't matter. I did stay, and I'm here. And I just love this experience. If there was a devil, see, there again, he is talking about terms here. It doesn't matter if you call him the devil, you call him the boogeyman, you call him defects of character, you call him shortcut, whatever you may call it. It's a term. But what do I honestly believe about that? Do I believe it's something that's out to get me with a pitchfork and he's going to chase me down and take me over? And when I die, I'm going to go here or there. I used to think about that stuff all the time. I don't think about that anymore. Today, I know if I'm not living honestly and correctly, there are laws, there are spiritual laws that are going to be adhered to, whether I believe them or not. I don't think, if I'm out here running around on my wife, I don't think that God's up there saying, all right, now I've got to come up with something here that for David. No, I think there are laws that are in place, and those laws are not going to be changed. They're just not. They're going to be adhered to. And so, but I can relate to Bill. He said if there was a devil, he seemed, not that he was, but he seemed the boss universal, and he certainly had me, and he had me for a long, long time, whatever you may call that. The disease of addiction is what I call it today. And but the good news is we got a way out on which we can absolutely agree and join in brotherly and harmonious action. That's the great news this book carries to those who suffer.
Love it, love it, love it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much, Nikki. I'm going to do things a little bit different, not entirely different. I'm going to ask you both the same question because it's something that's just kind of eating at me based on that last paragraph that we just went through. So Nikki, we'll start with you this question. What do you do to maintain sanity and connection with God when the noise of the world seems to block that out? How do you try and maintain that sanity when, if there is a devil, he seems the boss universal?
Okay, well, how do I maintain that? Is I work a 12-step program all day, every day. You guys still see me. I'm in my bathrobe because, as you know, on Wednesdays we record. I don't eat. I have done 2 4-steps today. I did a meeting today live doing the 4-step today. I've been on with sponsees all day, taking calls, people dying. This is what I do. So number one, repeat the question one more time, Justin, real quick.
Yeah, how do you maintain sanity and all that noise? Not
Okay.
just of that, but how do you keep connection with your higher power?
Okay, so I work a 12-step. I sponsor, number one. Or number two, I sponsor because I'm always in the book, in the directions of the book. And then what happens is what I'll do, everybody out there, is I'll take a line. Like last time I went to Luxembourg, I took this line: grow in effectiveness and understanding. And I just started focusing on that. How am I going to grow in effectiveness and understanding with my boyfriend when I go to Luxembourg? I need to grow in effectiveness and understanding with my government. What are they think? I need to grow in effectiveness and understanding with the people who think different than me. My new line right now is my thought life. So everything I'm thinking is my thought life. What is my thought life? So it's my thought life. Does that make kind of sense? So I'm taking a line. I'm number one, following the instructions of the Big Book, living in the book because it's a design for living. I'm sponsoring, so I'm always in the book. And then I'm really lately what I'm doing with the cynicism over the state of the nations, I'm taking one line and I'm chewing on it like a little pit bull and not letting go until it becomes not only a working part of my mind, my soul. I love what David said, those spiritual laws where it's just embedded in me, where it's just part of who I am. So I think I would suggest that to people. If you're out there and and remember who you are. I'm an intelligent agent spearhead of God's ever advancing creation, and nothing can touch me. I'm all the way up.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikki. David, same question for you. What are some practices or things that you do in your life to try and maintain that connection and that peace when the whole world is chaos around you?
Yeah, that is a great question, because that has happened more often than not, it seemed like, especially in the last year or so. Page 59 of our book, and if you're there, flip there. There's a prayer here that's very rarely used by most people I know. When I see these two words in the Big Book, we ask, that's a prayer, and it says, we ask his protection and care with complete abandon. When I'm crazier than what in Oklahoma we call a shithouse rat, that is the one prayer that really, really begins to take on a lot of depth and weight for me. Page 63. We thought well before taking a step, making sure that we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. You know, it's not about a commitment to work 4 through 9. That's not here. It's not about 3 flogs on the log, one jumps, how many's left? Well, you got 3. It's none of that crap. It's about abandoning ourselves utterly to him in those moments of chaos. I've got to pull back from self. And the way I do that is outlined on page 84 of our book. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. There's a lot of chaos tied up in that. When these crop up, not if, when, so they're coming. We ask God at once, not after a while, not after I talk to my sponsor, not after I make a meeting, or not after I make a phone call. At once, I need to ask God to remove it. We discuss them with someone immediately, not after a while, not here in a little bit, immediately, at once, he's saying. And make amends quickly. There is that word, quickly. If we do these things as they're outlined, then that chaos becomes less and less and less. That noise really begins to die down. But this last part right here is really what pulls me out of that and puts me in a different direction. We resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. And I don't even have to help anyone, but it's imperative that I turn my thoughts to helping someone. Because if I don't turn those thoughts, then I'm staying in the chaos and the confusion. So there's things in our book that is outlined here for us to do in those times. If we don't have the willingness to do it, our book says pray until that willingness comes. And, you know, that has been my experience, that chaos and confusion and all that stuff will absolutely lead us to do something one way or the other. Let's just hope it's the right thing. And so that's what I do in those times. Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing that. And I'm going to jump in and do a little share on my own on that same question, because it is the practices of mine now, they are based in sound Big Book philosophy, but I got to admit I didn't make the choice because of these directly from the principles of the Big Book. But I was losing my mind a couple of years ago because of the noise and the chaos and I was trying to control the world. I was trying to be God and see, okay, if I was in charge here, I would do it this way, and searching everything out. And I finally came to the conclusion that I have to disconnect from the news. And I'm not suggesting that anybody else do this unless this is what your higher power is telling you to do. But I was guided in my own step 11 practices to focus on what I have control over and not worry about the other stuff. Not to not care, but to not worry and lose my peace over it. And I think those are all very cool things. Thank you, Nikki and David, for bringing those up and sharing how you find peace in a chaotic world. And I think that's, I mean, as we read this, that's what that last paragraph that we read, that's Bill was trying to find peace in a chaotic world, and he had not yet found it because the devil seemed the boss universal, and he certainly had him. All right, let's do a real quick wrap up here with a takeaway from Nikki. What's something you took away from this conversation today?
Well, just after listening and hearing David's exact instructions of as he read the pages for us, it's just like, here it is. My final thought is, what is missing in this moment? Like, nothing's missing. That's what it is. Like, what in the chaos of all the world, it's like, what is missing in this moment? And my current sponsor says, honey, unless anyone's dead, let's just go have some noodles.
Love it. What is missing? David, how about a takeaway for you from our reading and discussion today?
Well, I like what Nikki said, what is missing. And I know that if we let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels, we're headed for trouble if we do. The good news is, though, if we are spiritually fit, that, you know, we're not avoiding temptation. The problem has been removed. The problem never was alcohol, drugs, insanity, all of that stuff. You know, the problem is self. It always has been. But, you know, to take away from what we read here today, you know, I don't want my mind to snap shut against any theories today, good or bad. I want to, the ones that are bad, you know, I want to have, you know, enough experience behind me now to be able to move away from those. I've got guys that has had an awesome spiritual awakening through this work, and they're having all kinds of trouble come in their life. And you know, they're beginning to question their experience. Is it real? Is it this? Is it that? But you know, it's like we always say, that the world is the world. But as long as we stay close and perform this work well, we're going to be okay. And so that would be, you know, my takeaway today would be, don't give up. No matter what, don't give up. Continue to hang in. I had a guy the other day, started him fresh in the big book. We began with step 10 like we always do. And those emotions come up on him and begin to really get after him. And it scared him, and he backed away and he left. And, you know, I hate that for him because, you know, he missed the miracle. But the good news is, you know, he's not dead. So he'll be back most likely, you know. So anyway, thank you, brother. Good to see you guys.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Nikki. My takeaway, I'm going to kind of go in a different direction from your takeaways. They were amazing. But what I took away from this is that Bill really spent a lot of time in these paragraphs pondering, meditating, thinking back, and trying to figure out what's going on and what had happened in his life. And this is, you know, before he's done his steps 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's jumping right into what we now call step 10, 11. And David, you've referenced this a few times. You start your people off in step 10 and 11 right away. And I'm starting to do that with my own sponsees that I work with. And I'm finding so much power in that. I don't need to wait for step 11 before I start improving my conscious contact with a power greater than myself. And I love how this story, how this relating of Bill W.'s story really focuses in on that. So that's my takeaway from this. Thank you so much, David and Nikki, for joining me in this roundtable. Thanks to all of you out there listening. If you want to see more of what recovery networks are doing, David's and Nikki's recovery networks are doing, you can find links to those in the show notes. If you want to support RICO 12 financially or any other way, you can do that also in the show notes. We're grateful for any help you're willing to provide. We're grateful for you just listening in and applying these principles. And that's the secret here. If I don't act on the things that I'm learning, it's not going to do me or anybody else any good. So let's get in here and trudge, walk, run, hike this amazing road of happy destiny with us. Work it. You are worth it.